Hello, extra time.
They're important to the league not to get a hoy because it damages your reputation. It makes people, when they read it, just laugh at you.
Simple enough. They're playing in the League of Ireland, they're playing in the European League, and they're credit and the game in this country. Maybe we should get Stephen Kenny then to manage the Irish team.
Welcome everybody to the Extratime Football Podcast. Your host Luke Jordan, Season 12, Episode 9. Today is Macdara, Ferris and Donal right alongside me today. Lads, how are we?
Good, Luke.
How's it going, lads?
Coming up later on, we chat to Peamount United, Lauryn O'Callaghan, and we chat about the season and last year and much more. The documentary too, actually, which is coming out this week. But first, let's turn our attention to the Premier Division action from last week. And I suppose, Macdara, I might start with yourself first. Couple of big wins for Shamrock Rovers over the bank holiday.
Yeah, the win in front of the biggest League of Ireland crowd for over 3 decades on Friday night against Bohemians, and then hard fought win in Waterford on Monday, and those kind of Friday Monday games are really important. So it was a good 6 points for Shamrock Rovers as they look to get going in the season. They've still yet to score a goal in the first half in any game, including the President's Cup. I think it's 8 games in a row they've failed to score in the first half. But if you're scoring 3 second half goals against your cross city rivals, you're not really going to complain about it. And then in Waterford, they were made work by Keith Longside, but I think they definitely deserved the win in the end to take 6 points from the 6 available over the Easter weekend.
The spectacle itself then, how was the atmosphere kind of pre-match, during the match? Obviously, you mentioned there was over 10,000, biggest crowd in over 30 years. So how was the spectacle itself? Yeah,
it was good because there was a few empty seats kind of dotted around. The seat kills between the kind of the home and away fans was kind of a section of about probably 250 seats, and then there was a few kind of spare seats around the place. I think there's about 10,500 seats in the stadium, which are slowly being converted all into a two-tone green. They're getting rid of the yellow and red seats around the ground, maybe not in the south stand for the time being. But a sizable Bohemians fans, I think they got, it's 10% you get, so I think they probably got about 1,100 tickets as well. So, big tifo display, certainly in the south stand ahead of the game. The smoke, the fact that it was on live on television as well, made it a good spectacle. In terms of the atmosphere, it was good. And from a Bohemians point of view, it was tight enough in the first half. Bows didn't do an awful lot, but they kind of frustrated Shamrock Rovers. They did have a couple of chances, a couple of shots that got kind of flashed wide, but come the third goal, they were streaming out with about 15 minutes to go to the sound of cheerio in their ears. So probably the last kind of 15 minutes was just Shamrock Rovers fans basically gloating. Although they did concede a pretty poor goal with literally the last kick of the game. But no, it was a really good spectacle. I think there's two, the St. Pat's are going to come to Tala in a couple of weeks' time. I think that's probably one that there'll be a push on to try and sell that out as well. The capacity crowds will kind of come when, the away fans will just get that kind of 1,200 to 1,500 allocation. Pat's got a bigger allocation for the President's Cup because it wasn't quite a Shamrock Rovers home game. So Pat's actually got the whole of that east stand. But there's behind the stand, they can kind of close off a gate. So kind of for segregation between home and away fans, it's essentially half that east stand will go to the away supporters. And then the capacity crowds will come and Shamrock Rovers can fill the second half of that east stand. They're only going to open that stand when there is demand, and it'll be the games against Pat's, games against Shelbourne, the way Shelbourne are going at the minute as well, probably be another big crowd. So it'll be the Derby games that'll tend to be those big games. But it was great to see, and there was huge crowds right across the league, and it's a case of Rovers have a stadium that's big enough to accommodate that. Bows are essentially selling out all their games. Pats are selling out, I think, virtually all their home tickets for the different games as well. So it's brilliant to see. It's a bit difficult in Derry. Their capacity is reduced, but great to see there's actually physical work going on to build quite a large terrace behind that goal. I think I saw it's over 2,000 spectators will go into that terrace. So they've demolished the kind of the corner of the main older stand as it kind of curls around towards the corner flag. So and a little bit of talk that they'll look to finish off the new stand on either side. That's a bit of a more kind of medium term, but again, good to hear some discussion that that's actually the case. But say the contractors are actually on site building or doing the demolishing to get that terrace section open. So that's really good to see the development around the grounds.
Macdara, just on the attendance there at Tala Stadium for the Bulls game, I think 10,094, I think was the total, was it?
Yeah.
There was this, like, obviously it's great to see crowds breaking 10,000, and of course all the great things that are being said about the biggest attendance in over 30 years. But like, you'd kind of come away from it thinking that they could have sold more tickets, or like, they could have pushed the crowd a little bit more. Like you mentioned the away allocation and stuff. Do you think that it comes down to that? Or like the vibe that was coming out of it was like, this is great, but it could have been better?
Well, there's only about 400 more seats in the stadium, and as I say, you do lose seats. It was Friday of an Easter weekend, and people are away. Kids were off school, so not the stadium was sold out, but not everyone would have come. There's probably a kind of balancing act, knowing you're going to kind of lose out on some. But I think it was essentially you couldn't buy a ticket during the week. It was effectively sold out. Like Rovers have had to limit the season ticket sales in the main stand, which is the west stand, and in the south stand, which is the one where the kind of the vocal supporters, the kind of singing section in as well. So I think you're always going to get not quite every seat filled, but there was definitely you could see certain seats around, but in what wouldn't have been. Well, actually, it would have been visible on TV cameras. There is, in the main stand at the back, there is space for people to stand. They probably shouldn't be standing, but they do. And those sections, it's kind of in between that older stand has a vaulted roof. In between those sections, there was a lot of people standing up at the back in the main stand as well. And it was apparent that, particularly in the north stand, which is the family stand, which was the Shamrock Rovers end, people cleared out towards the end as well. They can kind of hop out straight on the Lewis or straight into like the difficulties you have with such a big crowd is trying to get people in and out of Tala. A lot of people driving. Lewis is great, but people park in the square, and there's towards the end of the game, people were like, well, this game is over. I'm just going to head off. And there's also a bit of, when you've got 10,000 fans, there's a lot of new people that are coming to the game. You're hoping that they're going to become the likes of season ticket holders and coming week in, week out. But there would have been a lot of maybe not neutrals, but kind of floating people. There was also a lot of ground hoppers. So I was in the south stand for the game, and there was 10 Dutch guys who were in front. And tickets did go on sale for the south stand about a month ago, and there was a section of Germans that were queuing up as well. I think a lot of people, they see the YouTubers. There was another one there on Friday. They've seen the Coppa 90 video. They've seen, and other fans. It's kind of the Dublin Derby, and it can annoy the likes of, I'm sure, Luke as a Pats fan, and friends of mine who are Shelbourne fans as well. But I think for groundhoppers, that's a game that they want to come to. So, like, listen, if there was, I don't know, 100 groundhoppers, 150 groundhoppers, but there were tickets on sale about a month ago, and these Dutch guys had picked up tickets and had come across for the Easter weekend, and they certainly enjoyed it anyway.
Oh, it's fair play to them for being able to afford to stay in Dublin.
I was just saying, we get our ground hoppers too, Macdara. Don't you worry, we get a few foreign fans going in too.
Well,
like
Tala's a trek out, so the likes of Bose and Pat's definitely an easier one if you're staying in the city centre and you want to go for your really, really expensive points in Temple Bar rather than hopping on a Lewis out to Tala.
I think that YouTuber talking about, is it Blair McNally?
Yes.
That's him, yeah. Just a quick word actually just on the game itself. You kind of mentioned the poor goal Rovers conceded. Obviously it's only the one kind of blotch on their record in the game, but even the game against Waterford, just again, I suppose he might be a top point throughout the year when we do chat. Leon Poles, a top maybe for the two goals, the one obviously in Tala and the one in the RSC, the free kick. Could he have done better for both goals?
The one on Friday night definitely. His position we came out from goal. He probably didn't need to,
Mm.
and then we did come out. He was in completely the wrong position. So McDade was quite easy just to slot it in. I think in the free kick, to be fair, it comes off the bottom of like the Rovers wall jumps. They have the draft excluder, and it clips the bottom of Pico Lopez's foot and goes in the bottom corner. So I'd it. When I first saw it, I thought, oh, I don't know. And then when I looked at it again, I think it's very, very difficult at that point. Like the ball is, that free kick was in quite close. So yeah, I think he was very disappointed with conceding that goal on Friday night. I could certainly see that and see that after the game. But I think in terms of the goal on Monday, I'd give him the benefit of the doubt.
Donal, quick word on Sligo then. Probably a mixed weekend, would be fair to say. Good result away in the RSC on the Friday night, but then following up down probably with a lethargic performance, Richmond Park is probably the correct term to use.
Yeah, look, Good Friday was a great Friday, and then Easter Monday was a nightmare. Yeah, great win down in Waterford in the RSC for Sligo Rovers. Ellis Chapman, fine strike as well from distance, but it was the first time in ages, and Rovers fans I'm sure they'll agree, it was the first time in ages that they played ugly and dug out a win like that. I mean, Waterford were throwing everything at them. Denham was lucky not to have been sent off, I thought, and was lucky again not to have been sent off again in Richmond Park, coincidentally enough. I'm sure we'll get onto that in a minute. But then the ref, I suppose, was kind of making up for it with the red card he showed to Simon Power. Now, I did think if you're going by the letter of the law, it was the right decision to send Simon Power off, because he was kind of it looked like it was a foul on him in the first place, but then he was kind of grappling with, I think it was Connor Parsons, I think he was tackling. Oh, no, it was Niall O'Keefe, I think, actually, that he was kind of grappling with there. He kind of grabbed him by the leg and then he kind of kicked out at him. Now, it's not like he swung at him like a madman or anything, but when you make the kind of kick in motion, you're kind of making the referee's decision for him. So if you're going by the letter of the law, it was the right call. Like I said, Rovers doing really well to kind of just cling on, play ugly, and dig out the win, and like that really satisfied Sligo Rovers fans, given the year that they had last year with kind of players being accused of down in tools or not playing up to the level that's required or expected by the fans. To see that kind of grit in a performance was really, really satisfying. But then you make a long trip down to Waterford on a Friday night. It's like over 600 kilometers trip. Then you have to get back the same night. Then get back in Sligo till about 2 o'clock in the morning. Then they have to travel up again to Dublin on the bank holiday Monday again. Like we saw this last year with Sligo Rovers. They were the only team to play 2 away games on each of the bank holidays, in the Easter bank holiday and the May bank holiday. Now, this year it is different, as we will be playing Waterford and St. Pat's in the reverse, and both of them will be at home. But still, it's 2 long away games. And the FAI, when quizzed on it last year by other media outlets, they were just kind of like, well, it was a glitch in the system. Sorry, you're just gonna have to suck it up. But it's absolutely outrageous, to be fair. And when you're expecting teams to travel that length of distance, of course it's going to have an impact on the performance. And Sligo Rovers were miles off the pace on Monday. I'm not saying that's the sole reason why, but it's certainly a contributing factor. As you said yourself, they look lethargic, they look leggy all over the field. And it was probably a bad time to get St. Pat's as well, who were probably due to give a team a bit of a trimming. It looks like the tide is starting to turn for Pats now. They played really well, but Sligo Rovers were second to everything. Didn't really deserve to come away with anything. And as I mentioned, Denham really lucky not to get sent off. Pats should have had a clear penalty there. And again, I'm not sure how the referees missed it, but Rovers kind of right in their luck. But then, paying for it with such a sloppy performance.
Yeah, you mentioned there. I wasn't going to mention referees after our big discussion a few weeks ago, but it's the mind boggles sometimes. How I think what astounds you more about the decision was that, and the clip has surfaced on Twitter. I think it's in the highlight package actually for the game too. How he puts his hand to his mouth to blow the whistle, which is obviously it's a clear penalty. He's Brandon Cameron's pulled back. To the fact that he just, whatever happened, I don't know, was the communication with linesman or was it whatever the case be, then he pulled his whistle away. Just very poor refereeing. Again, it's just the mind boggles sometimes. I suppose maybe the main thing came out from the game for Sligo was probably the 2 injuries of the match. Obviously, Nando Pinacker come off with a serious injury, and Ed McGinty then come off a few minutes later after he was involved in the initial incident, did play on, but then did go off, and that could be 2 huge losses to that team.
Yeah, Nando Pinacker came in for a lot of criticism last year. He had a fine first season with Rovers. coming in for the European campaigns and stuff. Like he had an excellent first debut season in the League of Ireland. Didn't get up to the levels the high standards, I suppose, that he set himself last season. But he was getting back to the player that he was that in that first season now, and kind of winning back a lot of Rovers fans that probably would have been on his back a fair bit last season. But yeah, as you said, an absolutely horrific injury himself and McGinty colliding there. It looks as though it's fractured ribs that he's come away with. So, all the best to him, and we wish him the best of luck. But he's going to leave a serious hole in that Rovers defence. A thin enough squad that was stretched enough already. It's going to be like kind of pretty much been propped up by lads that are just waiting to get their chance, and the rest is academy players. So, it'll be interesting to see how John Russell reshuffles that. Because it certainly looks like Nando Pinacker is going to be out for a large period of the season now, and of course, we wish him all the best. It's an awful injury to get, broken ribs, but hopefully he'll be back and fighting fit soon enough. And just on Ed McGinty as well, if it was me, like I would have taken him off straight away. You can say like a player's always going to say they're fine and they're always going to want to play on. I'm not. I know, obviously, of course, I wasn't on the bench with the physio, so I don't know what was said, or maybe he passed all the necessary checks to play on. But when you see him kind of going down with nobody around him, then kind of dazed. It is quite worrying to look at, and given the nature of the collision that we've all seen it now by now, and how nasty it was, and all the fans that were there on the day were commenting on just how bad the collision it was. Like you could hear the smack and everything, like very, very bad. But hopefully McGinty's all right. I'm not sure what his prognosis is, but I'd be surprised enough to see him starting the next game against Galway, which is going to be absolutely huge in the showgrounds on Saturday night as well.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I don't think Sligo probably one of the things to do. Lack is probably a bit of depth in the squad, so losing those two players is going to be crucial to them. We mentioned Pat's there as well. They turned the tide, 3 clean sheets out of 4. I suppose when you are struggling, the first thing you do is you tighten up your defence, and now they've got 3 clean sheets out of 4, which is a good sign. And that was a big game Friday night too. We might touch on that a bit later on. Macdara, then just come to yourself there for Shelbourne, still leading the pack, haven't lost a game. 4 points out of 6, drawn 0 with Derry's never a bad result. I think Damien Duff called it after the game the best point he's received in 2.5 years in charge, or along those lines. They're still going well.
Yeah, I think part of the reason he said that is the virus going through the Shelbourne camp that had hit the squad in the run up to the the game. But yeah, still unbeaten, and they're looking very well. But I had a look at the stats just after Friday's game, but before Monday's matches, and they're 7th in the table with possession. They've only 46% of the play, and whereas Shamrock Rovers have 65% of the play, and that's 7 percentage points higher than this point last season for them, which was 6 games in. Derry City are sitting 2nd in the table with 55% of the play, and possession is pretty important. I was trying to get a handle on, can you win the league with having less than 50% of the ball? The study I could find is across Europe towards the end of the kind of 2018-2019 season, and they looked at 35 of the UEFA leagues, both and the second division, and just kind of have it here. The average possession for the teams that won the league was 57%, and only in the French League 2 did anyone win the league with a percentage of less than 50%. So if you look at the XG and XG conceded, Shells are overachieving, but they're winning those games. Rovers, as you kind of expect, Shamrock Rovers are high on all the kind of passing elements, particularly the way they play. But Derry aren't far off. The touches in the penalty area, which is quite an important one. Shamrock Rovers are top, but Derry are in behind, and Graham Burke's topping the player list for that, but Pat Hoban, who went off injured over the weekend, he was next, and Derry City are topping with crosses significantly more than any other team, with Paul McMullen averaging 7.1. So Derry should be slightly higher than they are, but I just thought it was interesting. Shelbourne they're the only team to play predominantly 4-3-3. The 6 of the teams in the Premier Division are all playing 4-2-3-1, and Shamrock Rovers is the only team playing 3 at the back. But I thought it was kind of useful to just do that comparison. But the fact that they haven't lost a game, I think to hold a Derry City side who were coming to Talca Park with a fair bit of pressure, having lost the previous two games. And actually, I thought it was interesting. They seemed to be not quite happy enough to take a draw away, but they really didn't want to lose and be three defeats in a row.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting games coming up for Shells, I suppose. Like I remember a couple of years ago when Shamrock Rovers kind of were starting their journey, you can kind of draw parallels when Dundalk were kind of the big team at the time, and Rovers kind of went, I think, was it 11 points clear at one stage, Macdara? They went ahead of Dundalk, and Dundalk clawed it back. I just, to me, it sounds like kind of Shelbourne maybe are this emerging team, and it's kind of maybe the similar to the Shamrock Rovers team. It's 2019. They raced ahead and they were clawed back.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it would
so
have been that. It would have been that season, and the challenge for Shelbourne this year is that they'll be playing in Europe. So, those games will come up now. Can you compare? Are Shelbourne stronger than Bohemians were last year? Like Bows had a really, really good start to the league, and then they fell off. But the difficulty for Shelbourne will come when Europe comes around. But by that stage, there'll be more than half of the season will have gone in. They do face Shamrock Rovers again in Talca Park because of the European matches. The four teams in Europe, those fixtures have all been moved forward from July. So that'll be a one-day fixture coming up within the next while. I think that's one of the ones that's earmarked to be shown on Virgin Media. And what I was talking earlier on about kind of upgrading of the grounds, people might have seen they put in additional kind of terrace barriers in Talca Park in the Riverside stand. So where the kind of the shed is and have the seats, they've taken the seats out on either side towards either corner flag, and they're setting it up that they can actually use them for terracing. So the Talca Park will have a bigger capacity, and if Shells keep going the way they are, they'll definitely need it to accommodate the fans that want to see a team that are top of the table and clear of the rest.
Yeah, it's a great headache to have that we're talking about teams filling up capacities and struggling to get people on the ground. It's a nice headache to have for once. Don, really quick down on Dundalk. Last week, we obviously did a good in-depth with James Rogers talking about kind of O'Donnell's future, and kind of the Loud Derby was the big game for him. He had to win. They didn't win it. They during it all wasn't a great game by all accounts. I mean, Steve O'Donnell kind of fighting, saying he gave up a lot to come to this club. I mean, obviously leaving St. Patrick's Day after winning the cup. To me, I can only see this going one way now, and that's going to be Steve O'Donnell the door.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to disagree with you, Luke. To be fair, he's been a man under pressure really since I suppose since Christmas. If you look at Dundalk's business in the off season, a lot of questions raised over that, the amount of players. Now, don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with players coming in from other leagues and stuff and lower leagues in England and Scotland. The only question you'd have is whether they're up to standard or not. So in terms of that regard, the only question I'd have over his business in the off season is the sheer panic that seemed to surround what was going on, and like loads of players coming in very late and loads of players coming in all at once. It was always going to be very difficult for a squad to gel that quickly. And the only player that came away with any kind of plaudits from the Loud Derby was Zach Johnson, the young centre back on loan from Sunderland. Fans seem to have really taken to him, but apart from that, Dundalk really, I suppose, all season, apart from putting Shamrock Rovers under pressure for about 75 minutes in Tallaght Stadium on the opening day of the season, they've really fallen away, and it's understandable the amount of pressure that Stephen O'Donnell is under. And James Rogers put it really well in an article earlier this week as well. It's a lot harder to row against your manager when he's a club legend. I mean, Sligo Rovers fans would have seen that with John Russell last year as well. I suppose he has been given time to kind of turn the tide around, but Stephen O'Donnell was coming into Dundalk at a different level than he was, with a manager that already, I suppose, had kind of proven himself in the league, having won the cup with Pats and going well in the league with them at the time as well. So he's under an awful lot of pressure there, but it's very understandable as to why, really.
Yeah, and look, it's coming from me, ironically, but I do think though he has been sold a pup when he went down there in terms of the new ownership, and party was promised X amount of things and it hasn't happened. That ownership has moved on, new owner in, so like it's all not right there when you can consistently change and the boardroom changing. It's not a good thing. But look, we'll just move on from the parent division and we're going to chat about the Women's national team, two big games coming up. Macdara, you'll be covering them for extra time. I suppose it's the start of a new qualification campaign. We've had a great Nations League, bit of a dip in the friendlies in February, but it's all go ahead now for these big games come this year.
Yeah, it doesn't come any bigger. When the draw was made, Ireland got drawn with world number 3, 4, and 5. The rankings have slightly changed, so now it's world number 2, 3, and 6. So they're playing the European Champions England next Tuesday in the Aviva. They're playing this Friday France. They were the runners up in the Nations League, and then later on in the group they're playing Sweden, who finished third in the World Cup. So it really doesn't come any higher than that. I was out at the Ireland training camp on Easter Monday chatting to 4 of the players, and they're all kind of saying the same thing. I had to look up what Kira Carusa was saying. She talked about iron sharpens iron, so she was actually quoting Proverbs 27:17. So as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And she was saying that in the context as this is where we want to these are the games we want to play against. We want to be playing against these big teams, and both herself and Jessie Stapleton and Courtney Brosnan, who I think we're going to hear some audio from as well, they all talked about how the teams that we're facing, they didn't want to play us. So at San Diego, Kira Carusa plays with Hannah Lundqvist and Sophia Jakobsen, and Carusa was saying that I'll just quote her here. My teammates talk about the game in Gothenburg. And they understand firsthand the difficulty to play a team like us, especially now compared to when we played them in the World Cup qualifiers. So, the teams didn't want to be drawn against us. We were by far the strongest fourth seeds. But just to put it in context, some people think, the rankings are kind of rubbish, but we've never won a match against any of those teams. We've played England 7 times, lost all 7. We've 10 defeats and 1 draw against France, and we've 2 draws from 10 games against Sweden, losing the other one. So now 10 of those matches are only since the turn of the century. Some of those games are going back to the 70s, and really, I think what the Ireland team and Courtney Brosnan talked about it as well is drawing on the experience of playing in Gothenburg in the World Cup qualifiers, where they drew 1-1 with Sweden, and that's the type of kind of results that they're looking for. That's the type of performance, but that was very backs to the wall. Whether we can be a bit more expansive than that, and we did kind of go through to qualify. Even if Ireland finish bottom, they will get a playoff. But if they're to stay in League A in the Nations League, they need to avoid finishing bottom of the group. But if they can get any kind of positive results in any of these games, I think that'll be a really, really good result. Like, this French side is packed with players from PSG and Lyon who are playing against one another in the Women's Champions League. Like the England team, Courtney Brosnan was talking about Mary Earps because she would look at her performance in a player that she would kind of look up to. But there's such star-studded team coming to the Aviva. Does seem like there'll be a big crowd for that one. They're talking about over 30,000 tickets sold, and they are selling individual tickets. But it's a difficult one. But we've a pretty strong squad to draw from. Niamh isn't available, but they've brought in Anna Patton from Aston Villa, who played underage with England, who seems to be a very good player as well. And they did call up Erin McLaughlin from Peamount just to bring it up to 26 players. But it's difficult. They're playing 2 of the games in the Aviva. The French game at home clashes with Shamrock Rovers Champions League second leg. So that game is in July. If Rovers are drawn away, then talent will be available. But the draw isn't made until the 18th of June. So they're a little bit unsure as to where that match will be. They'll move it elsewhere within Ireland if it clashes with the Champions League. But it's a great opportunity for these players to play in the Aviva Stadium. They beat Northern Ireland 3-0 there in front of just under 36,000 fans back in September. They played in front of really big crowds in the World Cup, and did well in the World Cup against very good sides again once again. So I don't think they'll be too phased about it in terms of the size of the crowd or the opposition, but it just will be really, really difficult. But and starting off probably the kind of the two hardest games, I think, probably away to France and then home to England. When they do play England away, that's in Carrow Road. They're the other England games, one of them's in Newcastle and the other's in Wembley. But so the games kind of are played off through into July. So really looking forward to it. I'm not traveling out to France, but I'm going to. There's a couple of us who will be there with Extratime on Tuesday for the England game. So really looking forward to that. The build up on Monday with the pre-match press conference in the Aviva, and then the match on Tuesday evening, which is a 7:30 kickoff.
Yeah, you mentioned that Courtney Brosnan clip. Let's have a listen to it now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know it's a really difficult draw to obviously have these extremely good opponents and high-ranking opponents, but I think, this is where we want to be, obviously, in the League A and testing ourselves against the best. So, there was definitely a few jokes made at training at Everton, but obviously be back in Sweden soon to face Benny again.
We've talked a little bit about with some of the other players about the big games that Ireland have played over the last few years. One of them was that away game in Gothenburg where we drew 1-1. Obviously the big matches in the World Cup as well. So the challenge of playing the likes of France on Friday in England is exactly what this team wants, to step up at this level you are in League A.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, like you said, when you're playing these big teams, these are the games that you need to get results and obviously try to win or get a draw and things like that to obviously keep progressing forward. So I think we've been here before, obviously facing Sweden in the World Cup qualifiers. It's quite similar, and just adding France and England into the mix, it'll be a tough challenge for sure.
It's a away game on Friday, but then back to Dublin on Tuesday in the Viva Stadium where Ireland had a very good win against Northern Ireland the last time. I think it'll be a similar 30,000 type crowd. How as a goalkeeper, you played in big games, but the goalkeeper is you're right surrounded by fans. Are you someone that blocks it out? Are you someone that kind of gets inspired by it, gets cheesed up by it? What's your kind of reaction to playing in front of big crowds?
I think it's different. I think obviously playing in the Aviva was class. It was such an amazing experience. I think seeing the crowd backing us and things like that, it was amazing. So obviously we're hoping, as you said, to get that again against England. And then I feel like I take it in more before and after, but I feel like during the game you're kind of, it sounds cliche, but you're really in the zone. So I feel like you're not really listening to the crowd. Obviously, you're trying to talk to your teammates and communicate and, focus kind of on the task at hand. And then you can take it all in at the end.
Just one more from me. In terms of video analysis, obviously really big. You're looking at your opponents the whole time. From a goalkeeper point of view, is it maybe different that the analysis maybe is more on your own play, your own positioning?
Yeah, I think obviously it's a combination. I think it's great to obviously we watch a lot of clips as a team of the opposition, and then goalkeepers will watch clips of the forwards, the wingers to kind of see their tendencies. But I think, I really like to watch clips myself from training or from the games because I feel like the goalkeeper's so detail oriented and it's all about these little moments and maybe the distances of 6 inches or something like that. So I think it's great to obviously have that resource to be able to make changes and just continue to learn. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Donal, you want to come in quick there before we wrap up?
Yeah, Macdara, just I suppose on the kind of confusion in the game in July regarding the scenario as to who's going to play in Tala or elsewhere, I suppose. Do you think it's kind of frustrating how it's kind of up in the air at the moment, and this is down to the success of the Ireland women's team, as to where their home venue is? Would they not be better off saying for this campaign, right, we'll just play all the games in the Aviva?
July, the Aviva isn't available, so I don't know what concert's on. It's not to do with the Europa League finals there as well, but there's a concert there. I think Taylor Swift is in Croke Park, but I could be wrong. Luke, you're a Swiftie, you'll know.
I kept that private. Don't tell everyone in public. Come on.
So the Aviva isn't available in July. So I think that
okay.
I think really that's it. No, a bit unsure as to where whether they might play the game in Turner's Cross, where they've got really good crowds for the men's under 21 team. The GAA have allowed certain venues to be made available, but I think that's more to do with Leinster. They're looking at Nolan Park, Kilkenny as an option, but Porky Queeve is an option, but may potentially be too big for the women's national team. But if it's a one-off game, you can really do something about it. But the games in Tala, we've seen before, they've sold them out, but they haven't had a full capacity. It might be different in Turner's Cross, as I say, when you have that one-off game. But I think it's just the fact that Viva's not available, and the dates are set in stone. Like playing through the summer, which is a little bit weird, that they're playing these qualifiers in July. A lot of our players are going to be out of season because they're playing in the WSL.
Yeah, I think the Taylor Swift gig, lads, was the 28th, 29th, 30th. I did Google that. I did not know that offhand.
In which venue?
Information. In the Aviva.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
I Googled it. Right, lads, we'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks.
And coming next, we chat to Lauryn O'Callaghan, myself and Donal, so stay tuned.
Get in touch. You can email us at extratimelive@gmail.com or tag us on Instagram using the hashtag League of Ireland or tweet us at Extratime News.
Let's do it.
Welcome back to the second half. Delighted to say Peamount United, Lauryn O'Callaghan's on. Lauren, how are you?
Hi, how's things?
I suppose we'll start with the game of the weekend. A good win against Spectators Youth.
Yeah, great win. It was really needed considering the previous weeks leading up to the game. So we were absolutely delighted with that win. And the spirits are really high in training this week. So yeah, we're looking forward to our next game against Athlone.
You kind of said there about the big win, like, for the team. I suppose it shows the competitiveness of the division this season already, that you nearly have must-win games already. Like,
yeah, definitely. I think it was last season we only lost one game, so it comes down to really small details, and we're all aware of that. And you've seen last week in the other results how tight the games were. So it's brilliant to see. It's definitely grown in competitiveness each year. And yeah, there's no easy game.
From making your debut to now, like, I suppose, how far has the game grown in terms of, say, the performance on the pitch, say, of each team? Or maybe, say, a couple of years ago, you might have said to yourself, well, maybe unconsciously, maybe that this be an easy enough game, going to certain teams. Like, how much has it grown in terms of the last 4 or 5 years now since you made your debut?
Yeah, no, it's grown immensely, because I remember when I started in the league, you'd have opposition teams where you're going into it, you don't want to be thinking this way, but you're thinking, oh, we could beat these 5-0. You wouldn't be saying that openly, but it'd be in your head. And that's not the case, especially in the last 2 years. Never mind this year, like, you're coming up against oppositions that you don't know what the result is going to be. You're preparing the same way as you would for any other team. And it's brilliant to see. It's a testament to the coaches within the league and the players. And players are becoming more fitter, more like health conscious. Strength and conditioning is grown as well, and players want to perform at the highest ability that they can. And you can see the players that are going over to England and other European clubs. It's really frequent now compared to previous years. So yeah, it's brilliant. The game is grown a lot in the last few years.
Yeah, Lauren, I suppose you kind of answered the question I'm going to ask there already, but what do you think that kind of, I suppose, expansion is down to? Like, is it down to more buy-in from the players? Like, I suppose we've seen in the last couple of years, you've even seen yourself with Tara O'Hanlon going across to Man City there in the off season. Like, opportunities are there in the women's Premier Division. Like, do you think that's a big motivational factor in that, or what exactly does that kind of all come down to?
Well, yeah, like, as I said, the game is grown. I think players want to perform at the highest level that they can, because they can see that there's an opportunity to improve their own game, their own personal development within our league. And then they see other players going abroad to European clubs, English clubs, and some players, that's their dream, that's what they want to do, and they can see that it's possible now, which is brilliant. And then the downside of that is that we're not keeping our best players within our league. So, like, it's brilliant, and we encourage any players to go away and play professionally, because it's an amazing achievement. We don't have that set up here yet. Hopefully we will in a few years, so we can keep that Irish talent within our league and grow our league. But yeah, like, as I was saying, the standard has gone up dramatically, especially in the last kind of 2 to 3 years.
as you said there, Lana, it would be great if there was professional opportunities for women in Ireland. But have you any ambitions of heading over to England or maybe further afield yourself in searching for professional football?
Yeah, no, I've definitely thought about it. It is really appealing to go away and stuff. But yeah, I think I'm trying to do my best I can here now with Peamount, and if the opportunity did arise in the future, I think I would consider it, definitely. Yeah.
Just in terms of, say, yourself and all the European players, kind of talk about obviously the lack of professional involvement in the game, but how difficult is it the work-life balance between yourself, say, working and playing? Like, does it have an effect, say, for certain players maybe can't be trained and so on?
Yeah, no, we'd see that a lot. I think a lot of the clubs would be unanimous in answering this question, that it is very difficult to balance work and training, because we have players that are doctors, vets, everything, and they're finishing work. Some are finishing at 6, 7, 8 o'clock, and then they're coming straight to training. And it's not ideal, but that's what they want to train. They want to play for Peamount. They want to play each week. They want to start in the team, and that's something that they value quite highly. But as I said, it's not ideal in terms of picking up injuries and burnout and stuff like that. But it is what it is. Like, we're not a professional league, so we can't train in the mornings and stuff like that. Yeah, it's difficult, but players, like, it's amazing the work ethic that the players put in.
Lauren, just on the Avenir Cup, I suppose, happened last weekend, you played Linfield. What do you make of the All-Ireland competitions? Like, is it something you'd enjoy as players?
Yeah, no, I think it's a positive thing. You get to get different insights into the new players that you're not used to playing against, coming up against new teams, new styles of play, stuff like that. And it's good because it kind of tests the coaches' approach and how to prepare against these teams as well, because you're not used to how they play or the type of players that they have. We wouldn't be coming up against them frequently. So I think, yeah, it's overall a positive thing. I think it's good publicity for the country as well, to show that the standard is really high in their league as well.
Do you think, Lauren, it's a kind of a welcome fixture now in the women's soccer calendar? Like, you look at last year, the whole tournament was played over the space of an international break to accommodate the World Cup. The games seem to be a bit more spread out now, and there seems to be a bit more of an accommodating sense towards the competition. Like, do you think it's a welcome thing, or is there more fixtures on top of an already kind of congested part-time system? Like, do you think it's more beneficial or detrimental to the players?
I think you'd have kind of mixed views in answering that question. Obviously, there isn't really any breaks throughout the league, and you'd have kind of players arguing that, like, we need a break. This kind of tournament shouldn't be introduced. But then on the other side of it, it is good to involve them, because you're having that approach of including everybody and kind of growing the publicity from other perspectives as well, not just within the kind of Dublin team, stuff like that. But it's kind of a hard one to answer because it is a very long season. But I think overall it is welcomed, and in my personal opinion, I think it's a good thing to have for the league as well.
And obviously, Peamount were quite focused on the league last year, obviously, as shows in the results, who came away as champions and stuff like that. But I think it's safe to say you're probably a bit disappointed with how you fared in the All-Ireland Cup last year. It might have been something, I don't know how susceptible clubs were to it when it was first introduced, but looking back, is there a bit of disappointment with how you fared out there last year?
Yeah, reflecting on it last year, we didn't perform to the best of our ability against those teams in the cup. I think we were so focused on the league games and our preparation for our next league game and stuff. It might have had an interference with that without us being even conscious of it. But I think it kind of came down to that, yeah.
And what do you make of the standard of the Northern Irish clubs, like, say, Linfield, for example? Do you see much of a difference, or do we similar in power with the clubs here?
No, I think it's very similar. You've seen with the results, they're quite tight. And yeah, no, they have a really good calibre of players. A lot of them are representing the Northern Irish team as well. So yeah, no, it's quite equal, I think.
Laura, take it back to, say, January 2023, this last season. And obviously,
Yeah.
we know the outcome now. Obviously, it was such a fantastic year for Peamount to win the league. How difficult was it being a player in that dressing room at the start of last year with the kind of the exodus of 2 or 3 key players in that dressing room?
Yeah, no, it was extremely difficult. Just the unknown of what's going to happen. What's going to happen to the club? Are more players going to leave? Are the management going to leave? Is new players going to come in? Like, we had no answers. There was loads of external factors that were going on that the kind of outside of our group wouldn't have been even aware of. And I think it's just a huge testament to the character of the players and the people involved in Peamount, that how we got from that position all the way through the season to then finishing the way we did was amazing. And those things don't just happen. It wasn't just luck. It was that consistency of each game. We were like, oh, we're going to win this. We're going to win the next game. We're going to prepare and train. And everybody was up 3 nights a week. And I think the key to it was how consistent we were in it and how strong that kind of mental belief that we had, because it was really difficult to stick together at times and to push through, because you had everyone in the media and other players saying things that if you were anyway mentally weak, it would have just knocked you off course straight away.
And you mentioned there, Lauren, I suppose the kind of wandering into the unknown there in that pre-season. You talked about the existence of the club and stuff, and those are pretty big statements to come out with, like management as well. I mean, you know more than most about the standard of management there. Like, was that ever a possibility that was genuinely the management team were going to walk away, or that things were bad, things beyond thinking about were going to happen in the club? Like, how realistic was that of an outcome? Like,
yeah, see, I don't think it was. Internally, or that kind of small group that we had, we all knew that we were sticking together. The management there knew that they were going to stay, but there was other people that would have been saying things to us, feeding into us, saying, "Oh, well, they're going to leave now," and you can easily kind of buy into that and start believing that if you want. That's what I mean about how kind of strong we were, that we all came together. And we would sit down together and we talk and we say, like, this is our plan. The people in this room want to be here. There's other people that don't want to be here, and we're aware of it at the time. But yeah, I think that was just key, that the people that stayed at the time, they were 100%. There was no question about that. There was no question about Karen leaving, or James leaving, or Emma, anyone. It was more of the kind of external people saying things to us and feeding into that. And then you might have certain people that would have kind of bought into that and start manipulating things, if you get me. But the kind of the key people that are still here with Peamount today, there was no doubts with them.
Yeah, and Peamount they're kind of the outliers now, really, in terms of the women's in the Premier Division. When you look at obviously the men's section is not in the Premier Division in the HSC League. So, like, in terms of like the future of the club and stuff, like, it's an interesting kind of how maybe where the club will go the next 4 to 5 years, to say more money does come into the game in terms of, say, Galway, or maybe say obviously Pats as well, but under 19s team too coming through. So, like, it's interesting where Peam might end up in the next couple of years.
Yeah, like, it's hard to say. Like, we're unique in terms of we're not affiliated with a men's team. And I think if it hadn't have gone our way last season, that would have been thrown at us from everyone, from all angles, saying, "Oh, well, this is why you didn't progress. You aren't affiliated with a men's team. You don't have the kind of money pumping through with the likes of Shelbourne, Rovers, the other teams would." But we still shown that, like, we won the league without that support. I'm not saying that's like what you want. Like, teams need support financially, but yeah, I don't know myself fully what's going to happen in the next few years. No one does. But it's just, I think it's a really positive thing, reflecting back on last season, of how well the club did come together and how well it supported us the best way it could, without no kind of financial support from a men's team. And we still won the league, not that way.
you mentioned Karen Duggan there a couple of minutes ago. How important was yourself staying with the club? Obviously, club captain. You've seen the brief clip, the documentary. We'll come to in a sec, or giving a speech. Like, so how important was her staying in the dressing room last year?
Huge. It was hugely important. Like, the players want to be there because of Karen. They buy into Karen. They respect her. And she leads us fantastically. And she's a great leader in what she does and how she trains. And I think Karen staying last year, there was absolutely no doubt. I knew she wasn't going anywhere, and I think that was key in everyone's minds. Like, as soon as you have those doubts about certain players leaving and stuff, that's it. That trust has gone out the window then straight away. But that never entered my head at all. Karen was 100% Peamount, and she always will be. And yeah, she was a huge influential factor in leading us to the win last year.
Lauren, you just mentioned there a couple of times about once players leave or say that they don't want to be there, their trust is gone and stuff. A lot of players across football nowadays, like in general, seem to be quite friendly with each other, and like, you know, from different teams, you always see them kind of hugging and high-fiving and stuff at full time and stuff. Like, I think, is it safe to say that there's no love lost now between the Peamount players that are still at the club and the ones that left?
Oh yeah, no, it's 100% would be friendly with everyone. It's not like there's any hatred or anything like that towards those players. I have massive respect for them still, and I always will. But at the time, obviously, when it was raw and stuff like that, it's difficult to process. But people have their own kind of ambitions and their own personal things that they want to pursue, and you have to respect that. But no, it's there'd be no bad blood or anything like that between anyone, and I think the rest of the team would agree with that as well.
Let's take it back to that clash last June, the 1-0 game in Tallaght. I remember covering it for extra time, and remember the celebrations after the game were quite jubilant. It felt like a real key moment in the year when 6 points clear just ahead of the World Cup. It felt like a big game.
Yeah, no, that was the game that won us the league. 100%. It was so important, and I remember the feeling going into that game in the dressing room after the team talk and stuff just before we went out. It was different. It was like we were looking at each other. It was like we won the game, but we nearly knew that we won already. In our heads, because we had such a willingness to go out and work so hard for each other, and nobody kind of spoke about that. We could just feel it. But yeah, that was amazing, that game.
In terms of then, obviously we mentioned the league triumph earlier on. I suppose with all whatever happened during the year, the players leaving, does it make the victory more sweeter then at the end of the season?
Yeah, definitely. I think when you're forced into difficult situations like that, like the more difficult it is, the sweeter than the victory at the end of it. And we were definitely in quite a difficult situation at the start of last season, just as I mentioned about the unknown and all the change and coping with that. So to have gone through all of that and stuck together and to come out and win, it was brilliant.
And obviously, Lauren, it'll be documented forever now as well, seeing as you had a whole TV crew following you around for the whole year yourselves, Peamount and Shelbourne as well. Tell us a little bit about that experience. It must have been strange, I suppose, at key moments of the season, having lads with cameras looking over your shoulders for the whole time.
Yeah, no, initially it was because it was new. We've never experienced that before. They're really nice people, and they would have had a kind of a heavy presence with us on the bus, in the dressing room, at training. You'd have players and coaches, managers, like they would have been mic'd up certain training sessions and stuff like that. But yeah, no, they would have been around us kind of most weeks, and getting a really good insight into the type of people we are, type of players we are, what we do, what we don't do, stuff like that. And you've seen the clip there on Twitter today in the dressing room before we played at Athlone last year when we beat them, and you hear Karen speaking and stuff like that, and it was very different. Seeing them in the dressing room, obviously having these huge cameras in the room and stuff. But I think we got used to it then after a week or two. It was fine. But yeah, and it's brilliant that it's been documented on RTE now. And I think it's next week it's starting, so it's huge for the women's game.
Do you think, Lauren, it's ever kind of frustrating though from a player's or maybe a manager's point of view? Like certain managers in the UK have kind of spoken out against these kind of documentaries being made, like the All or Nothing on Amazon for Spurs and Arsenal and these kind of clubs. Do you think it's frustrating from a point of view from a manager where like maybe things aren't going too well, or like, you know, you're trying to get your point across to the players, or maybe games it's just not happening on the field, and then next thing you turn around and there's lads there recording the whole thing? I'd say it's the last thing a manager or maybe a player or a captain or a coach wants to be looking at.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I can see how it can be potentially an issue 100%, especially when things aren't going in your favour, and you might want to say things that you don't want a camera in your face when you're about to say certain things. Personally, I didn't feel that it affected me at all. I wouldn't have altered anything I said or anything like that. But yeah, no, it's something to consider in future with things like that. But I don't think it had a massive effect on us.
But like as you mentioned there, it's on Monday nights, 8 o'clock on RTE. It's a prime time slot really on national television. Like ultimately it's just going to bring more eyes onto the women's Premier Division and more eyes onto women's football as well. Yeah. Like you see TG Cahir doing their bit every season really. And great to have the national broadcaster in RTE coming on board as well. So ultimately can only be a good thing for where women's football in Ireland is at the moment anyways.
Yeah, 100%. As you mentioned, 8 o'clock on RTE. I think it's a Monday evening. And there's going to be people that are sitting at home that don't know anything about women's football, and they'll be flicking through and they'll see it because that's the time they kind of sit down and watch telly, and obviously it's RTE. And you'd be hoping these people actually watch it and learn about us and hopefully get involved a bit more and want to know more, and it's only going to grow the game, and you know we need more coverage like this. But yeah, it's brilliant that it is being documented and it'll be on TV.
How often were the documentary crew around the players, the club, the management? Were they there once a week or every week, or how was the process in terms of them being present on the ground?
Yeah, no, they'd be up in the clubhouse. Say we'd be training at 8 o'clock, they'd be there probably from 7, just kind of chatting with us, having the cameras around the place as we're walking out to training. They'd be there while we're training, after training, that kind of thing. It was a heavy kind of presence. It'd be most weeks. It wasn't like once a month or anything. They'd be there most weeks, yeah.
Lauren, just you did an article with the 42 last year to kind of document the season last year in terms of the highs and the lows. You mentioned how pre-season 2023 was the best one you had, and discussed kind of the details in it. Was this year very similar, or was there much of a difference?
Unfortunately, I'd say there's a big difference because down to things that were out of our control, we had a lot of players sick in pre-season, and we've had a lot of injuries, and we still have about 5 or 6 players that are still out injured. We're hoping that they'll be back around kind of May time, hopefully. But just with last season, everybody was fit. No one was sick. We had everyone in friendly games in our preparation, and everyone was able to train, and that makes things easy. So it was kind of, you'd nearly say it was the opposite effect this pre-season, not in terms of work ethic or commitment or anything. It was just things that were really unfortunate. We didn't have as many friendly matches because we literally didn't have a team with how many people were injured and sick at the same time. And I think it's only now really we're feeling our fitness coming up to the standard that it needs to be, kind of since last week, compared to say the Athlone game, the President's Cup. That was like the first time we were playing with each other with some of the new players that had come in. We hadn't had a friendly game playing with these players. So yeah, no, there was a difference in it, but as I said, I think we're definitely up to the level that we want to be now.
So it's just a case of maybe lack of mark sharpness coming into the game or coming into the season.
Yeah, no, definitely. It would have definitely had an effect on our kind of mental sharpness, how we how we kind of work around the new players that came in. But I think it's kind of gone out the window now since the last two games, because like the new players that have come in have been excellent. We've gotten to know them, how they want to play, how we need to play around them and stuff like that. But just that initial game against Athlone, I think it did impact us in our performance.
Lauren, just when you mentioned about things being out of your control and stuff there for this pre-season, and how well everything went for Peamount in pre-season after all the media storm and the players leaving. We've touched on that enough already. But do you think maybe that last year it was just kind of like Peamount's name was on the cup, like it was just meant to be for you last year, given that everything just seemed to kind of click? And as you mentioned there, the game in Tallaght Stadium, beating Shamrock Rovers there as well, like it was just kind of meant to be for you last year, and maybe this year it's not coming just as easy.
Yeah, like it's easy to say that now because we went through and we came out on the right side and we won. But at the time, like we did have a lot of difficulties as well. It wasn't like smooth sailing. It was really hard to keep going each week and to perform the way we did. And this season it's new. There's new players in. We have new coaching staff. Sean Byrne that was with Bowes. He's amazing. We're really lucky to have him. I think we're still finding ourselves in terms of that kind of togetherness and the newness, and it's not the same as last season, and that's not a negative thing. It's new. But after last week, I think something kind of clicked with us. Getting the win, our first kind of big win together. And like training's been brilliant this week. The mood's brilliant and stuff. It always is. Obviously, when you win, it's easy to feel like that. But I do think something has kind of clicked with us in our confidence, especially.
We touched on it earlier as well, Lauren, about players going over to the UK and stuff, and like speaking out the professional thing. Well, I suppose the next more realistic step for players in Ireland anyway is getting called up to the international team. We see Erin McLaughlin, your own teammate, getting called up this week as well. A fantastic boost for her. And Peamount traditionally well represented with Ireland at underage level as well. Yeah. So like that must breed a lot of confidence when you see that one of your own is getting called up to represent Ireland. That it must instill confidence amongst the squad as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was so happy when I seen Erin getting called in. It's brilliant. It's brilliant for the club and for Erin herself. And you have the likes of Freya, Jess and Ellen in with the 19s. Like they're stepping up so much for us this season. We're relying on them a lot to be performing week in, week out, and they are. And you forget how young they are and like how well they're playing considering that. But yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's like when you see them perform with Ireland and get called in and stuff, we're all in the group chat straight away, like sending it in, congratulating them and stuff. So yeah, it motivates the rest of us as well in training then. So it's brilliant, yeah.
And obviously two absolutely massive games for Ireland as well coming up, France and England. I don't think they get too much harder than that in terms of women's international football. How do you see Ireland faring out over the two of them?
Yeah, no, it's hard to tell because obviously they're excellent teams, but I think Ireland they've upped their standards in the last few months as well. We've seen that, and the players that they have in, I think they could definitely get a result against them if they're obviously clever and they're injury free and stuff like that. But they're definitely capable of getting a result. Yeah.
Just on the international football, I suppose if you look back at the last say 5-6 years, the Ireland team has many ex-Peamount players playing for them. It just shows about the conveyor belt of talent that's come through the club the last 5-10 years.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I think if you were to go through every kind of international player at the moment, I think most of them would have their hand up and say, yeah, I played with Peamount at some stage. And yeah, it's a great test to the club. Same with players that are away playing professionally as well. There's a lot of ex-Peamount players around Europe and even the world.
Just looking ahead to the rest of the season then, Lauren, I suppose obviously the league is definitely probably priority number one, but is there an eye on the Champions League draw coming up soon? Because that's kind of maybe the European football is what players want to play, and is that kind of a big ambition this year too?
Yeah, it's a huge kind of motivational factor as well going into this season. It's always exciting to know that you'll be able to play in Champions League football this year, especially for players that haven't participated in it before. It's exciting. I think the draw is sometime in June, so yeah, we'll be really looking forward to seeing how that pans out.
Well, Lauren, thanks for your time. We'll chat again soon.
Thank you.
And before we go, there's a quick run through the fixtures this week in the SSE Electricity League, starting with the Premier Division. On Friday night, we have Derry City Dundalk, Bowes Waterford, St. Pat's against Shamrock Rovers, Drogheda United Shelbourne, and on Saturday night, we have Sligo Rovers against Galway in the West Derby. In the first division, we have Wexford Treaty, Finn Harps UCD, Kerry Longford, Bray at Lone Town, and Cork City Cove, all on Friday night. And I mentioned earlier on the podcast, we also had the women's national team playing over the next week. On Friday night, they face France in Metz. And then on Tuesday, we have the Humdinger game in the Aviva Stadium as England come to town. Quick reminder, Oisin will be back on Saturday morning with the League of Ireland Voice Notes podcast, so please tune in. I want to thank our guest this week, Lauryn O'Callaghan. I want to thank Macdara and Donal, as always, for coming on the podcast. I want to thank you for listening, and we'll chat to you all next week.